Hello, everyone. This is a short little bonus episode because we were going to take a break from covering a bunch of Warhammer races and cover a slightly different aspect of Warhammer Fantasy. How are you doing, Ginger?
Today I'm doing pretty good. I had a very late day at work today, and tonight we'll go into more detail on another podcast. But for me, Thursday nights are typically pretty quiet because we don't have much going on the ship. So it was a good day. Got some work, but then can just do this. Which man, I miss doing this. That was one of the few things in all this. I'm like, man, I miss just like talking about Warhammer with Fee and whoever Fee decided to bring on. So I'm kind of excited to do this, and I was also just excited for this in general because like it kept like kind of with the same thing with the zombie vampire pirates. These two kept popping up every so often, like you would mention this. So I'm like, okay, it's great to actually get to know a bit of these characters that keep appearing every so often.
So, what we're talking about is this is the first book of the Gotrek and Felix series. Now, I've read all of them, and I had to go back and listen to this one to make sure I had these parts right. I am going to say this. The best book from this series are books 8 and 9. But but this is where everything started, and this book is the only book written this way.
Really? Okay,
What I
interesting.
mean by
Because
that is the rest of the books are one adventure that's chapter by chapter, right?
right,
This one, every chapter is a self-contained adventure,
yeah.
which is this is the only one written this way. This is the very first one. It was the first one to come out, and it's the only one that the creator of Gotrek and Felix, William King, ever wrote this way. And according to Black Library, William King, when he retired, banned Black Library from ever writing another Gotrek and Felix novel this way. So when a new author takes over at like book 7, he can't write. No one ever could write this Gotrek and Felix novel this way ever again, which makes it a unique piece of like literature in and of itself, much less Warhammer literature.
Right, which I can see both sides of it because when we dig more into this, I can see now. I have no idea that was even a thing until you just told me, but I can see already how parts of the style work, but other parts I was like, I would have liked this story to have been longer, or like bits that I feel like they could have gone into more, but because each chapter has to be its own story, there's stuff that can't happen. But also, yeah, and
Yeah.
also there's the trouble too, which I'm you know from both we know from the history of a Games Workshop, but also your firsthand experience. Some decisions, also probably from authors, are less artistic and more unfortunately having to be like commercial decisions. But that's not what this episode's about. This is about just these three chapters to begin with. And if there's anything else more you want to say on this fee, I would like to. We'll just start at chapter one.
Um, So, chapter one introduces. This is the first time it's been explained what Gemhishnat Gemhishnishnaht is, aka the Night of Secrets.
Right, which. Mm-hmm.
It's the night of the year when both the false moon and true moon of the Warhammer world are both out at the same time, and full moon. And therefore it's the night when the most horrible things in the Warhammer world can come out.
Now, what is the typically I'm trying to think of the right term. Like, when this happens, is it every so couple of years, decades? Like, what increment in time marks this, or is it can be random?
It's once a year. It's the only time every year that it's guaranteed that the false moon and full and true moon will both be at full, and it's the only time that anyone knows for sure that the false moon will appear.
Okay.
because so I have to explain a little bit about the weird lunar cycle of Moor, aka the planet that Warhammer Fantasy takes place
Mm-hmm.
on. Um, uh, More Sleep is the name of the false moon, and it appears randomly through the year, except on Geheimnistag. So, and the problem with it is when it appears, it's not just things come out of the dark, but like Skaven spellcasters have their magic improved. Regular human and elf spellcasters are more susceptible to a chaos incursion happening near them. It's easier to summon demons. It's easier to make undead. Um, it is whenever this moon is out, it is a bad time. But
Mm-hmm.
for it to be out at the same time as the other moon, it's a really bad time.
Oh,
And it happens once a year, guaranteed on the same day every
which
year.
already explains a bunch of behavior in this chapter. That I'm like, now knowing that kind of makes a lot more sense to how people are acting. Um,
Yeah, you saw when they came up to the end.
right. So I think let's
They
get into the story itself, which I do like that already. It's an in media res star, which is always a good way. And already I'm starting to. People are still not in. I feel like almost while our podcast is a great start into it, as a gentle intro, I feel like this novel is a great introduction to the Warhammer world, where it kind of gives you the vibe of the world without being like here's 10 hours of info dumping.
Yeah, Gotrek and Felix has a really good habit of that. It all of Gotrek and Felix's novels are made to where you can pick up any one of them. It doesn't matter what order you read them in, and the story is in media res, ready to be taken by someone who's never read one of these novels
Right
before.
now, it obviously helped me that we've been doing this, so some of the things they mention, and I'll get to it later, where I'm like, oh, where kind of a dot or a bit of in lore you gave me before kind of connects into it happening. So, and I also, you told me to take notes, and I actually did take a good couple of notes. So I just want to start off with my one of my first notes is about Gotrek, and I literally my note says he has give me one like and I'll destroy Tokyo like zone status energy. This dude,
Uh,
he just wants to
Go ahead.
he just wants to fight.
Oh, he's
Oh
great.
no,
He's absolutely
no, and I say that
great.
as a good thing, but that's the energy I got off of him just from his like introduction. Um, but what I also
Uh, I, th- I think one of I don't know if it's in this novel because I've listened to or read every single novel of Gotrek and Felix, so I'm not sure which one it's in. But there's a scene where Felix is coming to the aid of a barmaiden because a bunch of drunks are trying to go have their way with her, and then they decide, well, they're gonna have their way with him too. And just before things get really, really ugly, Gotrek walks in and goes, "Drop the manling, and no one dies tonight." And then they all go. They start to challenge him, and then he looks up, and the big bad drunken hunter just turns ghostly white as Gotrek walks forward. He drops it, and he goes, "We didn't mean nothing by it. Just let us go." He said, "I said you didn't die tonight."
right.
And then just proceeds to talk down to them while he's breaking teeth, shattering hands, throws one of them out of the bar, but he doesn't throw them out the front door. He heaves the man out through the second story decorative window that's at the top of the bar ceiling.
Yeah, that already that tracks to feel it. It's not to go trek. Um, just looking at my other notes. One thing another my notes I kind of mentioned, I looked was like, and without going into too much detail because that's going to be a whole long, probably even a two-parter about dwarves. It every so often his tattoos get mentioned. Is it because he's a troll slayer? Is it because he's a dwarf? What is?
So, so dwarves don't normally have tattoos, but slayers etch tattoos on their body to indicate the monsters they have slain.
Oh, okay.
So that when someone asks them, "Hey, why aren't you going after this thing?" Well, they can point to a tattoo and be like, "It can't kill me, so it's not a worthy doom anymore."
Which is interesting how that bit influences just his behavior so much, both his attitude, but also just his decisions, because he knows what can and can't kill him. And let's see here. That was that note. Oh, another fun note about, again, dwarves is it. Felix mentions kind of the stench of Gotrek. Is it normal? Obviously, we're in a fantasy era where bathing every day is not normal, but is it not? Is it normal for dwarves to not bathe, or again, is this a Gotrek / Trollslayer thing?
This is strictly a Gotrek thing. Even other slayers bathe regularly. The reason Gotrek doesn't bathe regularly is because he wants to hide his smell so that he doesn't have to fight every single thing he comes across, because most things he comes across he thinks are unworthy.
Which is, another ongoing thing. Okay, good to know on that one. And I had another fun note, which is Gotrek is punch first, ask punches later.
Even his friend Nosebiter bathes on a regular basis.
Okay.
Despite the fact that Nosebiter also has nails in his head that are probably rusting
right,
from the water.
Okay, so it's a Gotrek thing. Kind of when you were mentioning the names, I've been noticing a very German, Austrian influence. Are they kind of in the equivalent? Obviously, the map in Warhammer is not a copy of our world, but it feels very much like that. If it was, the comparison is like our real life Germany, Austria, that part of the world.
Yeah, no, that's entirely accurate. The way the empire is set up is also very similar to how the Holy Roman Empire is set up, where the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire only controls an actual small plot of land, but he also has the power to dictate whether or not you continue to control a province or not. And if the Holy Roman Emperor says we go to arms, that means you better show up with something, or he's or you're going to be in big trouble later.
Yeah. Just some more fun notes. One of the great quotes I had to like rewind it because I wrote this quote almost word for word when Felix is describing Gotrek to somebody, saying, "My friend has a large axe and a very short temper."
Yes.
Yeah, and related to that too, Gotrek is thicker than a bowl of oatmeal because, there are moments if it does not have to do with fighting. Oh my God, Gotrek can be thick.
Gotrek Gotrek is the type of person who's clearly the country redneck boy who has an idea of what he's doing, but if you use any word that's longer than 3 syllables, he's gonna be upset
Right,
with
and
you.
it's not that Gotrek's dumb. I think what I like the word I say is he's just thick in the skull describes him.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep, he's extremely stubborn. He's extremely set in his
yeah,
ways.
which speaking of ways, what's interesting again, this is and I'm sure we'll go into super detail when we deal with dwarves. Why do troll slayers find that in death you are then honored? I'm assuming dwarven society is a
Okay.
very honor society.
Dwarven society is very honor society. That's why they have books of grudges, is because when you fuck up, it gets written down and it's a stain on your honor until you fix it. But there's other things like slayers have done something that they feel they have no way to redeem themselves for. So generally, what most slayers are supposed to do, and Gotrek doesn't do this. He has a different way of doing it. But most slayers are supposed to do is they're supposed to go to a place called Carrot Cadron, where there is the shrine to Grundny, which is the dwarven warrior ancestor, and you're supposed to etch onto the shrine your name and the thing you did that made you become a slayer, whatever you failed in or the act you committed. And that records your doom, and that records you as setting out for your doom. Well, Gotrek just grabbed Felix and said, "You're going to record my doom now."
Right, which does.
He's never been there.
Which again gives an interesting deviation of the of like without yeah, just a of telling a very interesting story. Though I will kind of admit, at least the way book one's formatted, this is gonna be a weird pull, but trust me on this. Have you saw the Han Solo origin Star Wars movie?
I saw most of it. I got up and walked out of the theater because it was bad.
Yeah, I don't think it was great, but so there's spoilers. It's not really a spoiler movie. There's a scene where the music's all tense because like Han Solo and I think Kylo Ren are like running through a battlefield, and the scene's set up to be tense. We're like, are they going to live? But the problem is, anyone going into that movie who has watched the Star Wars movies knows Kylo and Han will they may get shot, but they are going to live. They have such thick plot armor because it's a prequel. I mentioned that bit. It's the same thing also in Kylo, where like there's that whole scene where they're like some of the Empire's threatening Uncle Ben, and we're like, he's not going to die. We know exactly how Uncle Ben dies. Why are you trying to make us be stressed out when we know this is not how he dies? Why I mention all that is it's not really a problem, but it's just the for lack of a better term, it is a problem in this kind of media because Felix is telling these stories, and it even says the dates and all this. We kind of know Felix is going to survive. He may get the crap beat out of him and traumatized, but we know he's going to live through most of this.
Yeah.
But going back to the chapter one story, immediately gives me, and it's one of those I wasn't surprised, but I was like semi hopeful because I was thinking, oh, okay, this will be the slightly funny, upbeat stories, and how it ends. I'm like, oh, so that's how it ends, which is pretty much their, past spoilers for
Yeah.
spoilers for if you haven't read it. So spoiler warning, and here we go.
It's a 15-year-old book. We're
Yeah.
allowed.
Um, but it's the fact that I was thinking the way it gives us the right bit of I was hope they signed it up very well with the amulet and thinking, oh, maybe they might rescue it because the way it was worded was like, ooh, okay, just the first sacrifice, maybe the rest are there, but then when after all they're cleaning up the bodies, they see the amulet and they realize it's the son, and it's like I'm like, oh, okay, yep, this isn't going to be the exception to the rule. This is going to be the grimdark. But what I do like is there's still always that tiny. It goes back to my quote with Paul Simon about how he likes to write stories that don't close like a book but are open, and how that story ends. Even though it ends kind of sad, there's still that one little like nugget of hope with that one, the first one that they saved. And I was like, okay, that's fine with me because the story, even if we never hear the rest of the story, that is still the world continuing as it is, and not just be like,
I'm going to emphasize a point here about that tiny baby.
yeah,
So the Gotrek and Felix novels there's 18 total novels and there's 20 side stories that were put in White Dwarf magazine. They take place over the course of 35 years.
okay,
That baby is going to come back. Repeat in more than one novel.
Okay, cool.
And as they come back, every time they're slightly older and slightly older and slightly older. And I don't know how you feel about necessarily relationships, but understand that in the late medieval and the age of gunpowder and shot, it was not uncommon for a 40-year-old man to be dating a 20-year-old girl.
Whatever.
So I say all this because that baby comes back repeatedly.
I'm under the
and I'm just like, oh, okay.
We'll go into depths about this when we have the anime bonus episode. But for me, I'm the belief of like after if it's 18 and older, obviously a little bit older, but it's like in terms of legal, where I get creepy is like where I get creeped out is like if it's the under if both of like you have the girl's 16 and the guy's 30 or 40, I'm like, okay, yeah. But if it's like, when it's the numbers are like, 17-year-old and 18-year-old, whatever, that's really close. But when the age gap starts getting wider under the certain numbers, but I'm like, whatever. If it's two consenting legal adults, do what they want. but yeah, so that was an interesting. Let's hear. That was just kind of chapter 1. Um,
Chapter 2 is the bar
yeah,
fight
the
I
bar
was talking
fight.
about,
Oh my
where
god. So, okay, this is where my hot take comes back because I mentioned it before. My statement about not all, but it seems like from what you tell me, dwarves seem to be modeled after old Jewish people because they really accent the gold fever, and it's like, well, that's unfortunately one of the stereotypes. We can go all the way back to Shakespeare with the Merchant of Venice, because the moneylender is Jewish. So it's been a trope in media for so long, and I'm like, um but it's just interesting how, again, some of more of those kind of pop up, but it's that gold fever. Also, I just realized another thing. I really do like, at least for this book, I like the narrator. He is giving it his all and helping. He does really good voices. The female voices, but it's hard for a male or to do female voices and vice versa. But he gets the job done, and I enjoy him. What are your thoughts on the narrator?
Nathan did an amazing job reading
Oh yeah, he
this.
he adds so much to it.
He adds to it, and he also goes out of his way to sound like he's the old grandpa reading the bedtime story
Mm-hmm.
to the kids. And I'm like, this could not be a better, like, you could not have chosen a better narrator, because he gets into it and he sells himself
Yeah,
for
I
it
couldn't think of any.
the whole way
Yeah, I couldn't
through.
think of anyone that could have. There's like, again, that was just me being a nitpick. But apart from the nitpick, I'm like, there's nothing more he really could have done. Apart when you have a scenario where you have only one person doing the book, yeah, this is he hits it out of the park, and I greatly enjoy it. I mentioned that bit. Um, so chapter 2, which was, you mentioned already, the Wolf Riders, which even when I looked at the title, I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well.
Well, as we talked when we did the orc episode, Goblin Wolf Riders, the wolf is genuinely a more dangerous thing than the goblin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it starts off with that bar fight I mentioned, where Gotrek walks in and just beats the snot out of these three trappers like they're nothing.
Which is nothing, and I think, and the hilarious bit in that scene is they're when he makes the threat, they're not looking at him, so the trappers just think it's some dude, and then when they turn around, they're so wrong. Which is again a great character moment for Felix, where Felix is this kind of not romantic. Well, there is bits of Felix that are romantic, but the whole reason this fight is starting is because these trappers were harassing a young gal who, I hate to correct you, Fee, she wasn't a barmaid, and she was with the troop they later join up with.
Right, but so here's something you should
Mm-hmm.
learn. If you're gonna read more than one Gotrek and Felix novels, any woman who Felix starts dating is gonna have a bad time.
Oh no, he has that curse.
He Every single novel almost, he dates somebody and something bad happens to them. Now I'm gonna preference this with it's not always death.
Yeah, but still, okay, Fee, this is all right. Rant starts of, I do not know the author, but whenever I hear stories like this, and that's what you're telling me, to me, that is an author afraid to write a long-term relationship story. To me,
No, that's the fun part.
says the person in a relationship. This is also.
No. So the first three women that he falls for, yes, they die horribly. The fourth one, their relationship has to evolve and change, and he has to work out how they can still have a loving relationship, and she's now a monster because she's a vampire. And that's like 3 books long, and she even gets her own spin-off book series.
Okay. I'm hoping it goes the way I would like it to, but I have a bad feeling from what I know of the Warhammer books. It's not no Warhammer universe. Fee, let me down gently. Does it end well, or does that is another one where I'm going to be disappointed and I'm going to want to throw stuff?
It ends. I'm gonna let you down gently in the same way that the author let everyone else down gently. It ends with her writing him a love note that says, "I understand no matter what I do now, your best friend Gotrek will try to kill me. I love you more than anything else in the world, but my death is not something either of us would hope to tolerate." And she has to leave. So she left him she left him a love note. They were together for 3 novels. Gotrek bit his tongue and did not go out of his way to try to kill her. But that's how
I
that's how that
appreciate
ends.
V you telling me and letting me down gently, but that's it. This my rant is not at you. My rant is still I,
Go ahead and rant.
is so many. Like I would. That's why I love so much. My dress up darling, because spoiler alert, spoilers. First, V, have you seen it, and are you going to see it?
I'm probably not going to see it anytime soon, so
Okay,
you can go ahead and spoil
all
me if you
right.
want.
So with the spoiler warning out of the way, so throughout the course, as much as it's one of those. There's many great things. It is the love letter to cosplay, but the two main characters, at least in the anime, the manga goes more, and they're actually doing the cool thing where, unlike because Fee, you and I, we're around the same age. We grew up in the era when we're like cool, and then suddenly the anime goes in a weird direction, and you're like, what the fuck? And then you find out later it's because the manga artist the Helsing's a perfect example of this, where if you watch the original anime is accurate to the manga up until like volume 4 or 5, give or take. And the manga artist even gave the animators permission to be like, I have no clue where the story is going, take it in your own direction. If you read the manga, you find the direction where it actually goes, but the anime has to go its own direction because they're like, we don't know where the fuck it's going. So, and I kind of like the route they went. It was pretty interesting. But if you want the quote unquote canon one, you have to watch the OVA. But what I say that is why with Dress Up Darling it's taking so long is there's more manga, but they don't want to play the stupid catch up, make our own, have to chase their own tail and autocorrect and on canon stuff and all that. But what the point I'm trying to remember my dress up darling is throughout the course is their actual romantic relationship develops, and it's a very slow one. And I feel my hope is if the consistency of the quality of the anime and I'm assuming the manga continue, it's going to continue. But it's like I love that because mainly as someone who's currently single and but even when I was in a relationship, I would always get annoyed by any shows where it's like, yeah, we're being lazy by either we're gonna do everything like the perfect trope. I promise I'm gonna get back to the book is, you know, your typical romance anime, 25 and a half episodes of them not saying they have feelings for each other. Episode 26, suddenly they fall in love, kiss, roll credits, and I'm like, you just wasted, hours of my time. I want a story. That's also why I kind of like, I can't understand what my husband is saying. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. I'm going to get back to the novel. Thank you. But yes,
So
yeah,
I'm gonna preface this and give you actual hope now.
yes.
So the baby they rescued in chapter one
Mm-hmm.
is the same child
Mm-hmm.
in chapter 5.
Right.
Is the same grown-up adult in book 9,
Mm.
and she's still alive in book 12.
Cool.
Um, she's become a specialist at flaying beast men. Um,
Which, yeah, let's get back. Yeah, to get back
and
on the Beastmen because they kind of are mentioned back in chapter 1. So it's like I'm assuming we'll have probably an episode on this. I'm assuming Beastmen are either chaos mutations or.
I have been putting Beastmen back because they even make me cringe.
Oh, ooh, ooh,
So
and
I've
that's
just been throwing them.
and you have a hot.
I've been throwing them as.
Mhm.
I have a hot take on this. Okay, yeah, you want to know what my hot take
Go.
is? Beastmen reproduce sexually, but beastmen have no women, and they like what they do. I have no sympathy, no empathy, no remote remorse at the thought of slitting a beastman's throat. If Skaven are to be the bad guys whom we hate because we don't fully understand their way of thinking,
Hmm.
beastmen are to be the bad guys we hate because we fully understand what they do and find it utterly despisable.
Ooh. Not ooh at what they're doing, but ooh at that take.
I have just been shoving them back. Every time I'm like, we could do beastmen. Nope.
And that
We could do beastmen.
and
Nope.
that's saying something because I mean this is a compliment fee. You compared to me, you have a much higher tolerance in terms of what I like to call brain bleach material. I have a much lower one, so if you're even pushing it back, oof. Um,
Their reproductive cycle is they take women from other cultures, do horribly non-consensual things to them, and every 1 in 10 childbirths kills the woman but breeds a fully grown beast man.
it,
And I'm just like,
also insert rant about Warhammer novelists don't understand biology, but go on.
and I'm just like, you couldn't just give us maybe beast women, you know? Or maybe have it be a chaos corruption thing where they corrupt men into being beast men. That would have been more horrifying,
Yeah.
you know, to take a woman and corrupt her into being a beast man who does horrible things to people because it's fun. But no, 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 no. You had to go straight for the rape babies, and then make it where they enjoy making the rape babies. Oh, okay.
Once again, my theory of this is these novels. You can prove me if I'm wrong, Fee, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be right on this. These novels, and especially more of the lore stuff, like you're mentioning, written by narrow-minded white guys who live by themselves.
Yep, yep. Or who don't talk to their wives very
Right.
much. This
Yeah,
is
or and I'm
like
not saying like guys who are single can't write good female characters, but so far, just so many of these things evidence, as I said, seems like a lot of Warhammer writers did not pay attention in biology, did not pay attention in sexual reproduction
now
class.
now I'm gonna preference this with this. I have never seen a girl play a Beastman army. I have seen them play orc armies. I have seen them play Bretonnian armies, despite the fact that Bretonnians are hyper sexist. Um, I've seen women play all sorts of armies, but beastmen are just something that it feels like none of us want to
It,
touch because they're just you read their lore and it's like this is
right.
radioactive.
Yeah, there's
Goodbye.
certain things you can kind of like push to the side and be like, I'm not, what are you talking about? This looks cool. But then there's things where you're like, nope, that's a hard no. Because like with the orcs, you could just go, okay, this is the meme race. It's silly. Let's have fun.
This is the meme race. It's silly. They eat their prisoners. Yeah, but you know, you kind of expect them to do
Right. There's
it.
no real. There's like, yeah, it's dark stuff, but it's also yeah,
Now,
yeah.
now I will say this. So with chapter 4, William King kind of turns it on its head.
Okay.
So for chapter 4 of this book, he really turns it on its head. Chapter 4 and 5,
Okay.
particularly chapter 5.
So yeah,
And the way he turns it on its head is the Beastmen are following a female champion of chaos to the god Korn. And and he does a really good job at in this chapter of flipping back and forth.
yeah, which is
So that you see her perspective and you hear her thoughts and you see how she has to the political machinations of a chaos warband and how it has to be kept together on a knife's edge so they don't turn and cut each other's throats.
which to kind of get back a little bit to Felix and Gotrek is one of them mentions chaos. I forget who. And what I love so much about these two, and I can see why they made so many novels, is they're so good, and it's written so well of them calling each other's shit out. Where like, Gotrek calls humans weak, but then like Felix goes back going, oh, you don't have any, and he's referring to the Chaos Dwarves. So it's like already with, or like, no, I think the line was humans are too soft, and he fires back going, yeah, dwarves are too hard. So it's like, I love these kind of characters where it's not just like, oh, I'm the one character, my race is right, your race is wrong. No, they call each other out. I'm like, ooh, that's what makes really good storytelling.
And you see them call each other out, and they will go back and forth until one of them goes, now that's too far.
Yeah, and it's fun.
And it's not always Gotrek going, now wait a minute, that's too far. Sometimes it's Felix going, now, hold on.
Right, or him trying to defend. Like a perfect example is when they're mentioning it. Gotrek kind of references to politicians, and Felix goes, no, hold on here. That's the few, not all.
And later in The Dark Beneath the World, the third chapter, where Gotrek is like, why don't they just take the children and get rid of and kill them? And he goes, it's really hard to kill someone you love. Humans are a soft race. And he looks at him and goes, do you love nothing? And Gotrek just goes silent. And it describes the expression on his face, but Gotrek cannot respond to that.
Which there's more I want to say on 3, but to kind of jump back on 2, so the kind of troop they join up with is basically a bunch of royal exiles. They one of them mentions they said that they were exiled because they started a war. What war are they referring to?
Okay, so just like in late medieval and high medieval times, there are a lot of minor wars that happen between nobles who covet each other's lands, possessions, artifacts.
Oh, okay.
Even people in their court who were like advisors or particularly good knights, they will go fight each other over. And so
this isn't like, for example,
one of the things
just to give it. So, for example, this isn't like after a pie war or some big. It's more like a conflict. Would be a better term for it.
It could be something. We don't ever know what this war was. What we know is that it happened. It could be something as minor as just a pair of baronies. And for viewer reference, baron is the lowest ranking noble, and you basically says you have a castle and the surrounding land, and that's it. The reason why counts are called counts is because they rule over a county. The reason why you call a duke is because he rules over a duchy, which is a collection of counties. But anyway, so they've been exiled because they were kicked out of their house. And the reason they were kicked out of their house is, it turns out it's later explained. Did you listen to the part about Manfred?
Oh yeah, I got things to say about Manfred. Ooh boy, this is a character. So I will start with one of the only few good things about him. And I wrote this note in most of my notes. I wrote in order. So this was before his reveal. I at the time thought, oh, it's kind of cool where Felix gives him his whole royal title, and Manfred's like, no, I'm not in court, don't call me a lord, just call me my name. Which at the time I was like, oh, that's kind of cool and kind of makes sense, because he's like aware of his scenario, and then later find out not good things about Manfred. But I don't know, just from, again, what I like a lot of any character that isn't beyond a single, like, what would be the equivalent of a page character. I'm really liking the characters and how each of these characters, like, they feel, I know it sounds weird, but they feel like, okay, these are characters, not just words on a page.
Yep. These are complex characters. Every single person you meet who has a name is a complex character. Even the three trappers at the start of this chapter have different character moments to illustrate something besides being drunken assholes.
Yeah, which to me is what makes a good story. Is this is super brief, and I was just watching this movie years and years ago, and even though this one character is in there for one scene, you can tell the way he's written that the writers had almost made a backstory, and then it thus made the world feel real, because in daily life, all the people we walk into, whether we say anything to them, they have lived a life up to that moment you have interacted with them.
But yeah, this is also like the curse that Manfred is referring to, because where they are at the moment is the land of Sylvania, and Sylvania is the place where a lot of really bad things come out of. It's also the place where you notice his name is Manfred.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Manfred is also the name of the vampire Count of Sylvania, Manfred von Karstein. The implication is that he's related to to this setting's equivalent of Dracula.
Ah, but he's not a vampire. Manfred's not a vampire.
He is. No, he's not. If he was, Felix would have never stood a chance against him.
Right. Which to jump around that and this is going to be a weird thing to say. I'm enjoying the audio. This isn't against the narrator, it's the book itself. I'm more enjoying the conversation moments. The any of the action scenes, they're not written poorly, but it's just like it's like the opposite. Like when you watch an action movie, you're not watching it for the plot, you're watching it for the explosions, the gunfires, and the fistfights. This is the opposite. For me, I'm wanting this for those calm moments where the characters are talking. Whether or not it be Gotrek and Felix bantering, it's just the dialogue and the interactions to me are what I'm for on this.
And this is the only book in the entire series where that is the case. The rest of the series, you're just as excited for the action as you are for the dialogue. For some reason, just the way this first book is written, it doesn't sing the action sequences and make you feel like you're there.
Yeah, it just kind of feels almost like a rush summary of like, and then you picked up the sword, and then you hit the sword, hit the person with the sword, and then the person you hit the sword with screamed out in agony. That's not how it's written, but that's how its energy is.
Yeah, I'm gonna read. There's a quote from the second book, Skaven Slayer. And it goes something like this. And Thorqual felt the lightning within his hands and grinned with absolute pride. He would finally be rid of this damn human. As he threw the lightning forward, it arced straight at Felix. His life he could feel being ready to be ended in that brief instant. And then Thorqual screamed in agony as the stupid dwarf axe cut into the lightning bolt and released a feedback into him that sent shockwaves and ripped the magic from his very being. Like that's a synopsis of what's like a 3-paragraph just sequence inside of Thorqual's head as he's about to murder Felix, and Gotrek goes, nope.
Right, and which even though that's the summary, that summary flows better than the action in this. But again, it's not taking me out, but there'll be like weird moments. Like I think it's this is jumping ahead a little bit to 3, where Felix is. I'm like, wait, is he rolling down a hill or is he in the water? And it's like it's one of those.
Yeah, no, the entire sequence in 3 and 5, I cannot tell what the fuck Felix is doing.
Yeah, and I was like, and it's that weird, like, to give the equivalent, it's like if you sometimes watch manga and you're like, why is this person talking for 5 minutes while they're falling 100 feet? I give that example because it happens in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. Perfect example is they go off of a cliff in a car, and it's like. In the anime, it's like it takes 5 minutes, but in the manga, it's two pages because you read dialogue faster than you can say it. So this book and many books and many media have the same problem. But yeah, to kind of jump a little bit back to 2, and there's that moment where it's unfortunately when you are as the reader. Or like in any book or like TV show or whatever, where they set up something, but you're only in like episode 2 or early part of the book, and you're like, oh no, this is not going to end well, and we'll go with, like, they finally found a place to settle down, and then it's like, even before it ended, I'm like, I would love it. I
You're
would
like,
love
I'm
it.
100 pages in.
Yeah, I'm like, my brain goes, I would love it to end. This is not how it ends. I'm like, I would love it to be like, it's kind of like my joke about how I would like James Bond to actually be, where all of Gotrek and Felix's adventures, they go off, do the adventures, and then come back. But I'm like, no, that's a postmodern and my kind of take on this. She's not gonna live, and so it still hurt when she dies. But I'm like,
Like it was a great setup to kill a character, I'm gonna be honest.
yeah, but the kind of rewind a little bit before her death. I hate to keep saying, because her name doesn't get said enough for me to remember. Kirsten.
Kirsten.
Um, I don't know if this was intentional or it's a joke, but when Kirsten and Felix are like, and it was a cute moment of like, oh, we both got dirty. Let me take off your clothes. Like, okay, cute, sexy, romantic. And then the line is basically, it's like, and then they make love. And literally, now I'm sure if in the book the transition works better, but because it's being narrated to you, it goes, um, Maiden and Felix made love. Then Gotrek starts, and he immediately goes to the Gotrek voice, where Gotrek is like asking this loud, obnoxious question, and I'm like, well, that just kind of ruined the mood a little bit. But I feel like it was almost kind of on
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah. So the actual transition in the book is a full page flip and everything to another page.
Uh,
No, he did that on purpose. I like that he did that on purpose because the whole point was to be like, and now to deflate every single fan art boner in the universe.
which, if I say this, see, if I ever become a novelist or writer, some people go, why is Scott so romantic? Because I'm sick and tired of the not romantic stories. But anyways, but what's interesting about her death is it also, even though we've only been with Felix for about 1 9/10 chapters, it feels like almost, well, I would have not written the death, but at least from the story, it feels like it's a character. I hate to say this, but it's a character growth moment for him, because it almost feels like, while Felix is still the romantic, he kind of gets a bit of a reality check with it.
Yeah, he gets the reality check that no, you have promised to follow this crazed dwarf until you see him
But
die.
what's interesting, oh, sorry,
And
go on.
and you can't renege on that because you're pretty sure he'll kill you over
But
it.
what's interesting is you say that, but there's that moment where maybe he will, but this is where it makes the character so deep, is you can, I forget what point it happens, but Gotrek is having, whether it's what he doesn't say or how he says it, but Gotrek, even though he's as thick as a bowl of oatmeal, Gotrek realizes what's going on. Well, because it's those few moments where it's like, it's the joke, even a broken clock is right twice. Um, where Gotrek is the first one to say, "Oh, you like her, don't you?" So there is that moment. Oh,
Yeah,
later on
no,
when they
no,
found when
no.
they found the place and they settled down, where I forget exactly how the interaction works, but Gotrek, while he may not say it out loud, but Gotrek realizes, maybe we could try and figure something out. But even in that moment is like what makes these characters so good, is because, yeah, that's how people are. Where it's like, even though he is so devout to this thing to his death, he can see in that moment that it gives Felix such happiness.
The thing here is though, Gotrek's also saying that from a place of, I'm gonna say the meme. He's seeing it from a place of total loss. Because it's not spelled out verbatim, but it's hinted at in the fourth book, Dragon Slayer, that the reason Gotrek is a Slayer is because his wife is dead and it's his fault.
Oof.
And for dwarves who only have a female child every 1 in 10
Mm-hmm.
childbirths, for him to have had a wife is rare. For him to have lost that wife and it be his fault is definitely a good reason for him to be a Slayer.
Right, but I think now knowing that, even if I didn't know that, but it still kind of then adds to my theory of in that moment because he, even though it had the tragic end, he knows what that feeling of love is. So even like you said, he probably still would have killed Felix, but it's that he has that moment of hesitation because he understands where Felix is coming from.
There are so many moments in this series where you see Gotrek suddenly get like, you say he's as thick as a bowl of oatmeal, and he's as, you know, he's got the muscle thickness of the House of Swole, and he's an absolute brick
Mm-hmm.
shithouse and everything. There are moments every single novel in this series where you just see Gotrek deflate and look like the smallest person in the room.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you mean by that. And again, that's what makes, I think, again, why these stories, even just like I said, these 3 chapters, why they are so well regarded is because these characters are so well constructed. They're so complicated. Yes, I will rant about the relationship problem, but that Scott will rant about that in any medium, doesn't matter, East, West, who makes it, male, female, dog, cat, whatever. But in terms of characters, oh, I love it when this happens. Oh, that is my chef's kiss. Uh,
Now, I'm not gonna say the novel or what it's in reference to, but there's a later novel where at the end I hear Gotrek say, "Come, my brethren, we have sad work to do," and the novel just ends, and it's just like your entire world is crushed in those 5 words, because you just feel like you can see the heart of this hardened absolute murder machine, and you're just like, oh, he's a puppy, and someone just snapped his leg off.
right, and
Fuck.
yeah, and it's again, it's those what make great characters. Isn't he? Isn't just this emotionalist slughead, even with all that gruff interior. And to me, that's what makes a great character who has still humanity left, even though he's not human. He's dwarven, but it's always complicated talking about fantasy novels and like certain concepts. Like, I give my why I use the term humanizing goblins, where it's like not in Warhammer, but it's like human traits can still are what make good characters regardless of what race they are, because we are human beings, so we relate to human characteristics. But
And one of the cool parts about the way dwarves are constantly written in Warhammer Fantasy, and elves as well, um, yes, you have the veneer of every stereotype you're expecting from an elf or a dwarf. So, like from elves, you always have this I'm better than you, higher than thou, I have more experience and wisdom of ages, and all this other stuff. And then something happens, and suddenly they're a child whose heart has just been shattered. And it's the most human relating thing in the world. Um, and I'm saying this because there is a novel where Teclis, master of the winds of magic of the Elven Towers, looks at Felix, buries his head in Felix's chest, and sobs like a 2-year-old. Dude has been around for 2,000 years, and he has to stop, look at a human who's barely 40, and say, "Please hold me."
just you telling me that summary of that moment, I'm almost like kind of looking forward. Not like, oh, I want to see someone cry, but just in those like, ooh, what has led up to like a character like that? Just breaking down is just is I wouldn't say fascinating, but just very interesting to me. But to kind of make a change to, I'll just kind of end on chapter 2, which was again those you mentioned the sad work, but this one I think can get a good honorable mention. He thought about the future. He buried with them.
Yeah.
I think when I first heard that line, I probably cried a bit because I was just like, oh, 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 oh.
Oh, fuck my heart. Felix,
Yeah,
no.
you're like feeling like, not that I wish ill against Gotrek, but you almost like when he gets the shit beat out of him, you're like, well, has this uh
He has a death
death wish, so
wish.
you're like, well, kind of he's gonna get the shit beat out of him anyways. But like Felix, it's like, Felix isn't a cinnamon roll, no way. But it's just you feel this like, oh honey, you don't deserve this. He does not deserve the heartbreak he got in chapter 2.
And chapter 3 is why this is called Trollslayer, because every single novel, the title tells you what they're killing.
Okay.
So it's Manslayer, Beast Slayer, Dragon Slayer, Troll Slayer, Orc Slayer, which Orc Slayer is actually a lie. I'm just gonna say that Orc Slayer is a lie.
Well, he kind of kill, doesn't he? In 3, kill jumping around in 3, but doesn't he already kill some orcs? Or no, those are goblins.
No, he kills orcs, goblins. They run into an ogre at one point, and then they run into the troll. And they learn that the way you kill the trolls with fire.
Yeah, which you had mentioned, because I'm hearing that's jumping around. But yeah, when they hear the troll, I'm like, even though because I have it because of this podcast, I have that information already. I'm like, even before he mentions the regeneration, I'm like, they're gonna have to kill it with fire. I know they're gonna have to kill it with fire, even without the buff it has. They're gonna have to kill it with fire. So my first note for chapter 3 was in all caps. French accent. The narrator is having so much fun with the fact that he gets to do a French accent.
It's not just that. He's having fun. He gets to do a French accent. He's having fun that he gets to flip back and forth between like a dozen voices in this chapter, and he's just having a ball.
I wish there was a behind the scenes I wish someone stuck a camera in the recording booth while he was recording these, because I would have loved to have seen the faces or gestures or whatever technique he used to get these voices out of him.
And I like that they used the original first edition troll. The original horror line of fighting a troll is from first edition. The beast literally regenerates its muscles, sinew, and flesh as fast as your sword can hack it off.
Yeah, and it gives a quote. I forget the exact quote. It mentions the sound it makes, which I was like, ugh. But it was not a good but it made me go, because it was such a good detail. Like, ugh.
It's such a good detail. It's so visceral, and it's happening. They're literally hitting it as hard as they can, hacking off the entire bicep in one of the descriptions, and the sound it makes, and it just back into place as though it wasn't even damaged, and it's just like, ah!
Though they kind of jump back to an earlier note with there, so the whole, like, we're confused what the hell's going on with Felix, because in the water and all that. But then when he gets out and he meets the group, Felix puts a legitimate question of going, about the fire, but I have a note saying, yes, Felix, it's a smart idea to light a fire or you'll get hyperthermia, because it just obviously, again, Warhammer likes to dance with the idea of reality and logic, but I'm like, yeah, you kind of just were submerged in the middle of winter in a river. I'm pretty sure you're going to be cold, dude. And Felix is a normal, basic ass human. He has no special magic resistance to cold. He's a normal human like you and I.
The funny part about this to me is the end of the chapter where they've consigned themselves to dying, and the tomb ancestor ghosts rise up and kill everything, and Gotrek looks at them and goes, "Hey, I was supposed to die here, you bastards!" They're like, "No, your death's later, and it's gonna be greater."
It's almost like you remember in the scene of Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Which one?
Okay, it's the scene towards the end where he holds up the script going, wait, I wasn't supposed to lose. It's the same energy.
Yeah. Same energy. Wait, I was supposed to die. No, you get to die later, and it's going to be even better.
Now I have an image of Gotrek holding up the manuscript of the book going, wait, I'm supposed to die in here. They mention at some point, and this because they kind of mention it and then kind of skim over it. Something I wrote the note: 8 Peaks, Queen of the Silver Death.
Okay. So, Carrick 8 Peaks. It's called that because it has it's a valley that's surrounded by the 8 tallest mountains in the region. And so the dwarves carved statues and a huge city into the side of that mountain. And the reason she's called Queen of the Silver Death is because um, to kill one of the orc invasions to try to seize Eight Peaks, she literally had the silversmiths melt down several hundred gallons of silver, and the dwarves had to watch as they poured it over the greenskin horde. So you have these dwarves who have that, instinct to get gold and silver and precious gems. And the literal thing they have to use in the boiling oil pots is silver. Because silver has a very low melting point.
Interesting. Never knew that. But knowing that it makes a lot of sense.
So silver is a strange metal. It has a low melting point, but an incredibly high boil point. Gold has a high melting point and high boiling point, but it's very soft metal.
Yeah, which
silver is not soft.
Which is what I like about, someone made an years ago about Minecraft, how it takes the realistic, because if you ever played Minecraft and you make anything out of gold, it's fast, but it's the easiest thing to break.
Yeah. Silver is not a soft metal once it's hardened. But like melting it down, that's easy. You can take, if you have real silverware that's actually made of silver, you can take a lighter and soften it up enough to twist it. Because it does not have a high melting point. But to get it to boil, that's higher than oil. It's one of those, it's like water where, and a lot of people don't realize this, ice takes up more space than liquid water. Water is one of the few substances that when you boil it, contracts. And so the steam it's letting off is condensed.
Yeah.
Water's densest form is actually a liquid. And I'm like, what? Water, why? But it's one of those weird substances that has this huge range, but that's why she's called the Silver Death, is because she ordered silver to be used in place of oil because they were out of oil.
Right, which to kind of piggyback off of the war tactics, when they are mentioning the history of why the city they've gone to has fallen, this is a real life comparison. It was an interesting where you had a almost, I'm sure it's just me drawing connecting dots in my brain, but it's interesting how with not an exact comparison, how America World War II tactics were a special form of tactics that we excelled at the time, and then why one of the many reasons it's a huge, people way smarter than me have done topics about why Vietnam went so badly, but one of the aspects was it was a guerrilla war, and most of America's army was not very experienced with guerrilla warfare. And then it kind of also, to give the comparison into the novel, it then kind of went into city tactics. So it was kind of just me drawing the lines of just how it was showing. I think Gotrek kind of gives not an exact comparison, but mentioning how it was a similar issue where the dwarves were like, well, we did so great here, but then when it was underground or it was in city, we didn't do as well because they weren't as experienced in that kind of guerrilla warfare.
Yeah. So 8 Peaks.
Yeah.
Something to know about it. The prophecy behind 8 Peaks is everyone who covets Carrick 8 Peaks will die there.
Which explains one of the characters' death in chapter 3 to a degree.
And so the great, like the big dwarven lord they met at the beginning, who just like, yeah, you guys can go ahead, we're not going to send you any help, and then sealed them in the vault. He's one of the characters who covets Carrick 8 Peaks because it's his family's ancestral throne.
Right.
Well, him, 2 orc characters and 3 Skaven characters, plus 2 other dwarven characters are all gonna die in Carrick 8 Peaks later. Not in the Gotrek and Felix novels, in a different novel set altogether. But like Carrick 8 Peaks by far has the highest named character body count in Warhammer Fantasy. Like it is devastatingly bad how many name characters die at this location for one reason or another. Um, the death I described where the Dwarven King grabs a guy and beats him to death with the Book of Grudges while announcing every grudge that will be settled with his death. That happens at Carragate Peaks.
Well, speaking of this is good. Not transition, but whatever. You mentioned the Book of Grudges. The Book of Remembering gets mentioned. Does that have anything to do with grudges, or is that something different?
No, that's something entirely different. So, if you get put in the Book of Grudges, you're in trouble. If you get put in the Book of Remembering, you did something above and beyond expectation to the point that they never want to forget about
Ah,
it. To open a Book of Grudges is done in anger or sorrow. To open a Book of Remembering is done only in jubilation.
okay, that's cool, and we'll go into more on the doors. But just to know,
Like everybody's all about the Book of Grudges, and I'm like, what if I want to be in the Dwarf's Book of Remembering?
I know, right? Like, uh,
And the reason they have a Book of Remembering is specifically because of humans.
hmm.
You have to remember that after dwarves hit 400 years old, they can't die from old age.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Dwarves have a certain magic about
Hold
them.
on, Fee, hold on. I have to process this. Hold on. What? Wait, so it's kind of like I can't even think of a comparison. So if you make it to that milestone, wait. So
It's literally okay. I'm going to describe it the way Moon described it. I'm 398. I got to live 2 more years without a heart attack, and then I'm golden. It's exactly right. So basically, if a dwarf lives and takes care of himself and maintains his body until age 400, he achieves venerated ancestor. And because of the way that Warhammer Magic works a lot based on what people put faith in,
uh-huh.
a venerated ancestor cannot die of old age.
And that's also both male and female dwarves.
Correct. So if a dwarf hits 400 years old, he becomes a living venerated ancestor, which means he can only die from being killed.
People die when they are killed.
He can no longer die of disease. He can no longer die of old age. He can no longer die of organ failure. He can no longer die of cancer. He cannot die of anything else except for someone either poisoning him or physically cutting him apart until they can't find something vital.
I know this is. I know this is probably not, but this is me going into shenanigans land. Obviously, because Felix is human, he can't live this long. But I have this hilarious that Gotrek, somehow makes it to 400, and then he gets pissed off that he makes it to 400.
God damn it. Manling, why are you already dead and I'm still here? They call me venerated living ancestor now. Damn it.
He keeps going into battle, and he's like, he gets like more and more desperate. He doesn't bring the axe. He just goes in like barefisted, and he somehow still lives. And he's like, why can't I die?
Oh God. I want so bad to like later introduce you to another novel so you can be introduced to Malachi Makaisen. He's a character from these novels, and he's another dwarf who's a slayer, but he came to a different conclusion than Gotrek. His conclusion is I don't have to die a great doom if I kill everything that could possibly kill me.
You know what? He's out alive, but he's got a point.
And he goes on to like he invents the Spirit of Grugny is his greatest invention, and it's a Viking longboat suspended by 2 large armored balloons with multiple distribution sacks. So if you penetrate a part of the balloon, it's sectioned off so you don't get a ripple effect. Enchanted with dozens of dwarven runes for protection, armed with cannons, The guys on the rest of the crew have shotguns and rifles, and it even has a bomb bay and a small detachment of gyrocopters it can deploy.
Fee, how many of these have you played in a video game?
Uh, so Total War Warhammer, I did an entire army of 19 of them plus the one that Malachi could summon. So I had 20, and I'm just like, go get them, boys. There's nothing in that game that is prepared for 20 of those things just to start driving across the battlefield, dropping bombs, and the dwarves leaning over the edge, shooting shotguns at people like, go away! There's nothing that can stand up to it.
See this problem? This makes this problem go away.
And he later invents a parachute, but he calls it a reliable.
You know, again, he's not wrong.
But yeah,
because it's hilarious as that was to get kind of back to the story. I forget who mentions it. Someone was like, "Oh, to prepare myself for this journey, I'm fasting." I'm like, in this world where sometimes food supply is unreliable, I don't think fasting before a long journey is a really good idea. I get the spiritual aspect, but the logical part of me goes, that's a really dumb idea.
But yeah, they get through Carricate Peaks. Their companions, of course, die.
Yeah.
But then we get to the Mark of Slaanesh, which they basically show up at a tavern.
Wait, are we still in 3? Where are we right now? Hold on.
That's the end of 3.
Right. No, there's a bit more that happens in 3 that I have interesting notes on.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, why does Gotrek not call Felix by his name? He calls him Manly or Mangly. I can never get it for...
Manling. The reason he doesn't call him by his name is because when a dwarf calls you by your name, they're being formal. And furthermore, when a dwarf calls you by your name, they're doing so because they don't consider you what I would call a close friend, what I would call the close kind of friend that Gotrek considers Felix. But Gotrek can't call him something that sounds honorable or prestigious. He's got to call him something that sounds derogatory and playful, just to emphasize the point that what he's saying to Felix is, "You're my friend. This is the only way I know how to express that."
See, this is where my brain just went. I am picturing Gotrek in your stereotypical anime high school uniform, and him going, "It's not like I like you or anything, Baka."
Yep.
If there is not fan art of that, there needs. We need to make it.
That is 300% what's happening here. He can't openly say, "I like you."
Fee, if we reach...
So he's doing it the only way he knows how.
Fee, if we reached a Patreon goal where we can make art, we need to make that into... If it doesn't already exist, we need to make it exist.
Put him in an anime schoolgirl, put Gotrek in an anime schoolgirl uniform, have him look away from Felix for it's the eye patch side, and him go, "It's not like I like you or anything, Madling. Baka."
Yes.
No, Gotrek is so, like, there are so many moments where Felix is where in one paragraph or on one page before, Felix is questioning if Gotrek has a heart or not. And Gotrek's only way of expressing that he likes Felix is for him to look at Felix and go, "Don't get yourself killed now."
Right, I know. That's the thing is what makes it, again, so good with the characters is, like, even though he's putting on this front, both that's his that's his personality, but also from, you know, the society he comes from. There's always those little cracks that we just see that brief moment where it's like, no, he actually does care. And I love them.
Or stuff like Felix is certain he's dead, and then Gotrek's hand just comes out of nowhere and picks him up and goes, "I got you, Madeline. Come on."
Right.
And I'm just like, you could have left him, but you didn't.
Right. It's a great example of, well, it's hard to do in a book, but a version of show don't tell. It's just showing that yes, he cares without him saying I care. They mention also. Oh,
if
go on.
if anything ever happened to Felix, like Felix was actually dead, there would be no force on that planet that could stop Gotrek from murdering everyone in the entire, from horizon to horizon, from where he was standing. Everyone and everything would be dead, and then he'd kill himself.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's like the meme. It'd be like, if any harm comes to her, I'm killing everyone in this room, and then myself. That whole meme. Yeah, same
Yeah,
energy.
yeah, same energy the whole way through.
Um, this is more of a lore thing. They seem to accent a lot of it in chapter 3. There's a lot of bowing in chapter 3 where everyone feels like they're bowing. It's like, someone's bowing to who? Now, is it just because of the setting they happen to be in, where they're in a
It's dwarfs. That's dwarf society.
okay.
So to emphasize this, in a later book, there's a point where they're supposed to be going out on a great quest with with a dwarven throng of troops to reclaim a besieged and falling hold. They spend 3 days settling grudges, no matter how minor, in the most formal, like, ceremony, like,
Because you told me there is.
if you've watched like Shogun, or you've watched like Seven Samurai,
Yeah.
where everything is all this bowing and ceremony and proper and everything, and I'm just like, just go do the thing. Well, that's what they do. Is everything has to follow protocols and stuff. Gotrek gets so mad during all of this because 2 people are arguing over a shield, that he jumps forward, smashes the shield in half, and throws it to both of them and says, "There, now you can both have half of it. Stop fighting over this. Let's get going." And the two of those two issue a grudge on the spot against Gotrek. But Gotrek is so intimidating that neither of them wants to follow through and collect.
Well, to kind of continue on, well, again, as I mentioned before, we'll probably dig deeper into it when we do the episode. I think, Fee, I have a feeling this for sure. We have yet to do a multi-part episode, but I have a feeling Dwarves is going to be a multi-part episode. And I feel like that episode, it's going to be 10% me asking questions, 90% you going off and explaining it to me.
Possibly, yes. But quite possibly,
but
yes.
It won't be a 2-parter. I have a feeling on that one. But regardless, the Engineers Guild. Am I assuming it's kind of a version of our Freemasons?
No. It's more modeled on the guilds of the High Middle Ages, where everything that happens and everything the guild does is a guild secret.
Gotcha.
And everything is so rigid and set in place by tradition and thought and idea that if you step even remotely out of line to innovate or do something cool or creative, you're just hammered down on.
Gotcha. This is kind of also mentions back to something you mentioned a little earlier about, like, Gotrek's attitude changing. Is it happens when they're kind of deep in the caverns, where, like, Felix says something along the lines of, because Gotrek feels at home, because he feels like he's in a place of honor, he's standing taller and almost happy.
Yeah. Gotrek definitely remembers what it was like to not be a Slayer. And it comes up constantly. And he lets himself go. He lets himself be happy for just a few minutes. And then he realizes, oh, right. I don't get to put on a shirt tomorrow.
Right, but again, that's
or he realizes, oh, right. They're having me lead because I'm a Slayer and I'm expendable.
But again, that's what just makes the character so good, is that he has those moments where he's not just being the blunt head. He's being he's showing his humanity.
Yeah.
Let's see. Also, just for context, look at my notes. What kind of, in all of the episodes we've done already, just to give a a moment in time, what major event that we've talked about happened before this?
Oof,
Like, it doesn't have to be like right
that's a
after, but
good.
just to give a kind of where in time are we? I know it keeps saying the number, but to me right now that's just numbers. Or like what's
Um,
going to
that
happen
is
that we've talked about, just to give again some kind of context.
okay. The last thing we talked about was the lizard men called a comet down on their own city to destroy it after the Skaven took it
Oh,
over.
so that's the equivalent of what's in headline news right now.
That happened 6 years ago from this point. That's the last thing we talked
So that's
about.
the to kind of give some kind of comparison. It's like how, even though it's a few years difference, but still like COVID for us. Like that's the big major event.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The next big major event that we've talked about that happens 3 years after this, or in this case, it happens about 3 years after this. Louis Leoncourt gets crowned King of Bretonia.
I was trying to remember which one he was because I remember I.
He's the really good guy that even like this hardened vampire who's been around for 1,000 years cried when he died.
Okay, okay, that guy. I need to re-listen to that episode. But
Like,
anyways,
but like even hearing and I still like I hate the end times novels, but there are just certain moments in it, like hearing a narrator say with the absolute finality, and Manfred von Karstein wept. I'm just like, uh, fuck. Because you realize that this setting, Warhammer 40K might be for the layman, it might be for the mainstream type of deal, but this setting has a depth to it that constantly comes
well, it's the
up.
fact be that I'm willing to bet if you and I tried to do the same thing with 40K, we'd probably, my guess, we'd get about 7 episodes in, and then we kind of run out of material. This feels like
Oh, we wouldn't run out of material. We would get 7 episodes in, and then it would just be us constantly memeing it because it'd be so
right
stupid, and the depth would be gone.
because my friend, even though he kind of spark noticed it, he basically he was able to explain all of 40K on just on a few hour long road trip, not even back and forth, just one way. I think the road trip was like 2 hours, and I pretty much I could tell you almost everything apart from like, oh, here's the subsects and here's the subclasses, but he basically was able to give me all of Warhammer on a 2 hour road trip. I mean, War
Yeah,
40K,
but
40K.
like
Let me be, yeah.
40K, yeah, but like to emphasize this point, any subject in Warhammer Fantasy is a crystal clear blue lake, and you can see the water is completely clear, and you look down and you want to see how deep it is. But even though the water is clean and clear and you could drink from it anytime you want, you will never find the bottom.
Yeah, with the exception of what was like the second episode we did with my complaint was it was a mile wide and an inch deep.
Uh, God, David?
No, it was like their base.
Oh,
Yeah,
Norska.
Norska, but that's just Norska. That's the interesting thing is that's only Norska. Everything else,
That's only Norska in general, but if I jump into like the character from Norska, let me look up his name real quick. But if I jump into like one of the characters from Norska, like my brain is
you
having
know,
just
we
a
have so,
moment.
but the point still stands is like that even within that you can then kind of dig into all these characters. While from what little I know about 40K, we can't dig that much. Well, this we can. I'm sure this podcast will probably be doing this for a few years just because of how much.
Yeah, like if I dug into Wolfric the Wanderer or I dug into Valkia the Bloody, it just keeps going. There's always something, like even when I'm going back and reading to get information to present to this podcast, there's always something that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
Right, right,
Crap.
and even within even within these novels, because there's some things I'm just skipping over, or I'm like, it just goes over my head because there's so much, but there's like, I, it's also, I should send you the video. I know we've had this talk before, Fee. It's not your favorite, but one of the reasons, I'll be brief on this, why so many people love Thomas the Tank Engine, and specifically the books it comes from. Reverend Audrey, what he did amazingly well is he created stories within stories, and he made the world feel real. There's characters that will talk about even events. The man wrote a book that was just straight lore. You would think, oh, children's novel about trains, haha. No, the dude straight up wrote a book that has no pictures apart from the cover, that just gives you the history of Sodor, and it's a thick book. But that's what makes why people in their adult age, it's not just, oh, I'm going to remember nostalgia. It's because these worlds feel so real. And the kind of give it back to this is, yeah, you have all these depths of characters that, are related to each other or somehow interacted with each other.
Yeah, and characters mentioned in, unlike 40K, where a lot of the time characters have one novel, and that's it. That's the entirety of what you hear about that character,
Right.
and then everything you hear about them afterwards is from a third person. Fantasy has a constant, you see a character and they may go away from the novel, but then they come back later.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the baby is, again, it starts there, but we're going to see that baby again and in a couple of more books.
No, we're going to see that baby again in chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. We see that baby again in chapter 5.
Oh, okay. So there, immediately, where the world kind of sorry, yeah, has this, it feels connected, which makes it feel real.
And we get that the baby is now 6 years old. We get their backstory. We get everything about them. And the entire emphasis on chapter 5 is around that child. And then that child comes back in book 8 when Felix is starting to get into his middle years. Because where we're starting, Felix is like 16.
Really interesting.
And by book 12, he's a middle-aged man going into his elder years. He's almost 41, 42 years old by then.
Fee, you're making me.
Gotrek still hasn't died.
Fee, you're making me feel old. I'm 35.
Okay, Warhammer
I
Fantasy. I want to emphasize this. Warhammer Fantasy. If you live to be 40, you're an old man. If you live to be 70, dear Lord, you're a lucky old man. Most people in Warhammer Fantasy die by age 25.
Okay. So it's that world. This is just more a random question. I kind of was redigging through my notes. Where was it? I had that note. Where Felix. No, Gotrek keeps calling Felix a blood brother. So I have ideas, but what in this case does that mean? Because I remember one of the chapters, Gotrek makes a big deal of saying he is my blood brother.
They have sworn a blood oath. That is why Felix, no matter what happens, has to go witness Gotrek's doom. Is because they have sworn an oath and shared their blood as a part of that oath to say, I am bound to you as you were bound to me.
Okay, so already makes it cool because it's not like a servant master thing. It's they're on, kind of, for lack of a better term, level footing.
It's that very unsanitary thing, but also that really badass thing you see in like some fantasy or some medieval movies where someone cuts their hand and the other guy cuts his hand and they shake hands.
Yeah, but it was just more to accent that it's by the name they see each other on level ground.
They see each other on level ground, and they see each other as this. You are, if we had been born at a different time, we would have the same mom.
Oh, okay. So,
and if Felix were to ever meet Gotrek's parents, they would treat him as if they were his parent, as they were Felix's parents as well. And on the flip side of that, Felix knows that his family isn't going to quite understand that, but the couple of times that he does go back to see his family, he fully expects them to treat Gotrek as if he were Gotrek's brother.
Okay, that's really cool, and especially from what you've already sprinkled within dwarven society, the fact that that can happen, those are the moments where I'm like, ooh, 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 I like this. I like this a lot.
In Crusader Kings 3, for those of you who play Crusader Kings 3, this is the type of thing where it's the ritualized friendship where you swear an oath of best friendship with another person. Exact same thing. um Any other questions?
Just more, again, with just making a few more notes, but I just find it interesting. I forget who says it, how they comment about them knowing about the warp stone, and someone looks at them kind of weird, but then they go, well, kind of need to know that in my line of work, which find it interesting that already people, it's this weird like multi-layer thing of like, yes, I know you think it's weird that I know this, but I got to know this in my line of work. Because
so remember how humans basically say the Empire says Skaven doesn't exist. Warpstone is a Skaven thing. Thereby extension, Warpstone doesn't exist.
Okay, so that makes a lot more sense why he's defending that information.
Yeah, but for Gotrek and Felix, they know Skaven exists. Gotrek is a dwarf and accepts Skaven exists because they have to fight them all the time. Felix knows Skaven exists because he's been on adventures with Gotrek and run into them and had to deal with Ratmen. So, at the end of the day, no, he has to know what Warpstone is.
Which, then, speaking of the Warpstone, makes that troll even more of a monstrosity. Jesus, like... Whew.
Yeah, so when we talked about Skaven, I talked about Clan Moulder and the Hell Pit and how they create monsters in the Hell Pit. Warpstone is one of the key ingredients they use to create those genetic mutations. I have very little doubt the troll here was experimented on in the Hell Pit and is just an escaped experiment.
Which then kind of them defeat... Oh, what were you going to say?
A very successful escaped experiment.
Yes. How though that nice moment in 3 where when they finally kill it, the spirits are able to come to their rescue because it no longer is their grave being desecrated.
Correct.
I'll just kind of then end though at that moment where if this was the movie, this would almost feel like the climax where it's like, oh, we think our heroes are going to die. And Felix mentions holding the sword, which someone previously lost, literally like a moment ago, lost their head literally over it. And he's holding it and he says, oh, I suddenly don't feel fear. Is that just the adrenaline kicking in, or does that sword actually have magical properties? Because it has a name.
This is where Felix gets his magical sword.
Okay.
And the longer he has it and attunes to it, the more of its abilities that it unlocks for him.
Ooh.
But just as Gotrek has a magical ancient runic axe, this is where Felix gets his magical ancient runic sword.
I'm assuming, is that the sword we see on the cover?
Yep. That is the sword we see on every cover. And that is also the reason why Felix starts getting into his late 40s, early 50s, and doesn't lose any of his vim or vigor, as they call it, where he doesn't slow down. His ability to fight in combat is not degraded by his age, and it's because of the sword.
Now vigor, does that also mean he gets that in romantic sense, or is it just more on the battlefield?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the sword, this is a joke, but the sword's basically magical Viagra.
Yes.
And looking at the cover, it's a pretty cool looking sword, not gonna lie. And yep. I think pretty much that's kind of, I think, a good note to end on is just, okay, he gets a cool magical sword.
Yeah, so quick aside for the rest of the audience, the rest of the novel is 4 more stories. Effectively, each chapter is a novella short story. It's the only Gotrek and Felix novel written this way. And I hate that it's written this way. Because all the rest of them, I think it was made to be written this way because Games Workshop told William King he had to write it this way. And then afterwards, he was like, "I'm never writing it that way ever again. Here's the second novel, and if you don't like it, you can't have me as a writer anymore." And they were like, "You know what? No, we like you." But
I
yeah,
think though, honestly, not. I can totally understand where he's coming but from an introduction standpoint to get these characters in the world, I think it should have only. Now I need to listen to the second one at some point to say whether I'm right or wrong on this. But in theory, I kind of like that it's this because then it gives you a nice sample of all the kind of adventures they'll get up to, and then you get your long story.
and I'm gonna be honest, and I'm not trying to be mean. William King did a fantastic job in creating these two characters, but by the time we get to Vampire and Giant Slayer, William King's ability to write has degraded, and he's very much not the author he was in novels in the first four novels. Nathan Long, the guy who takes over um, at Orc Slayer, Nathan Long can write. If anyone ever came up to me and told me the novels I write remind them of Nathan Long, I would be like, I need to go change my panties now. Thank you. Because Nathan Long is fantastic at he picked it up and he just wrote some amazing, fantastic, over the top stories. Um, for Gotrek and Felix, and I'm just like, yes, thank you. Um, and then Josh Reynolds, the guy who picks it up after him, tries really hard, and he's better than William King's later novels, but he never quite hits Nathan Long's ability to write these two characters. Um, and then David Geimer, I'm not going to criticize him; he's okay, but I'm really sad that because of what Games Workshop did to uh, Warhammer: The Old World, we don't have anything after 2016 about these two characters because they really deserved more and really deserved a better ending than what they got. Fuck you, Games Workshop. The end times are a travesty. um, but yeah, there is this stretch of novels. Like William King's really good at building the world and setting stakes and creating
Mm-hmm.
ideas. Nathan Long took it and went, well, what if I just went over the top with it? And he runs with it so well. Um, and he runs with it for novels 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and all the short stories. All the way he starts in the in at the end, he starts writing them. He starts editing for William King in the second omnibus at Vampire Slayer, and then takes over for William King entirely around novel 8 when William King retires. And then he writes two full sections of Gotrek and Felix entirely on his own. And it's just like, yeah, no, you know what you were doing.
Mm.
A man knew how to cook.
So okay, we're gonna bring this up, and I'm sure we'll devote a whole episode to it. But if tomorrow you got an email, phone call from Games Workshop saying, "Fee, we will give you control just of the books. You don't get to have models control, but you just get to have control of the books." I'm assuming the first thing you will do is make the end times no longer canon and destroy it and just pick up from where whatever book was before left off.
No.
Well, what would you do then?
The first thing
You don't get you. So let me be clear on this hypothetical. You don't get to kick the CEO's ass. You only have control over the novel part, over the book department.
okay. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call Nathan Long. My exact words are, how much is it? How much is it to get you to write one more novel? First thing I'm gonna do. And the second thing I'm gonna do is immediately declare the end times non-canon. But the first thing I'm gonna do is call Nathan Long and go, hey, How much would it be for you to write one last Gotrek and Felix novel and write their ending proper? That's the first thing I'm gonna do.
Nice.
And just, see if he's interested. Or if he's got a good recommendation for someone who he protege.
Yeah, you never know, because sometimes there are some cases in media where creators have found a worthy successor.
Yeah, he hasn't. He's retired. He hasn't written anything in 12 years. I don't know that he would want to do it, but it would be like, I could write any number you want on this check.
Yeah, here's
Name your
the
price.
check. Say yeah.
Name your price. You have it.
Oh my god, I would love. Well, here's the other thing. Just on this fun scenario, we made a whole long 3.5 hour video about how much the website sucks. Imagine if they made, be it independent live action or animated version of Gotrek and Felix. I would pay for the subscription to watch that if they made it good and loyal to the source material. That it would be so good, and I feel like
if they made it wouldn't even live action or animated, I wouldn't care.
yes,
If they just made something true to the source material of Gotrek and Felix, it would be better than any Warhammer 40K movie or media we could ever hope to get. Like, it would, like, if you just took the source material and just used it, you could make something better than any 40K media we've ever gotten ever.
that wasn't fan made, but
And I wish not even wasn't fan made. I mean, period. We would have literally, if you wanted to make a fantasy thing in a post Lord of the Rings world, in a post Vox Machina, and it be different enough to distinctly stand on its own, but it be recognizable enough that people really get into it. Gotrek and Felix as an animated work, or even if you did a series of a couple movies,
or even did a BBC level budget of just live action, but either way,
and I want to emphasize this point about this novel series. It's so good that there are 3 characters from Gotrek and Felix who get spin-off novel series.
Damn.
And one of the really good ones is that vampire I talked about at the very start of the episode. Her name's Ulrika. She gets a 3-part spin-off series, and it's one of the best, most intricate understandings of Warhammer Vampire Society we've ever had written. And at the same time, it has the same energy and excitement that this novel series has to it, because it's written by Nathan Long.
Okay.
But it's still really good, really fantastic, and it takes you on a ride.
Well, already, even within these, again, when we get to the other format, it all felt like these are quick little rides, but they are still very fun, even though they are dark, but they're not. I think, like you said, the perfect example of Lord of the Rings, while it has dark-ish moments, it's not, at least the movies are not that dark. Then you have the more darker side with give me a second. Game of Thrones is much more on the dark side, at least my interpretation of them, and the few I've seen. But yeah, I feel like Gotrek and Felix would be that nice sweet spot of it's not totally grim dark where it's like, hey, what happened to all the colors? Why is it only gray and brown? But it's also not totally all the colors of the rainbow, nice, cheery, happy, everyone wins. So it's this nice, it sounds like it's been focus group, but in a good way, where it's it's dark, but it's not too dark.
And those of you who might think you've heard Nathan Long from somewhere else, I'm gonna drop something on you. Nathan Long is the person who wrote Wasteland 2, the video game.
That name rings a bell, but why do I not feel like I remember it? Wasteland?
Well, he's the lead. Wasteland is the precursor to Fallout, and the second
Oh,
game finally came out in 2014, and Nathan Long is the lead writer on it, and it's the best written Wasteland series thing ever.
Wasteland,
Um,
Wasteland. That took me a moment.
yeah, he's also currently in Exile's lead writer, and In Exile are the people who made Wasteland 2. They're the people who made Wasteland 3. They're the people who made Tides of Numeria, and um, their first game was The Bard's Tale, which is a parody about the tropes of D&D and
Mm.
stuff. But yeah, no, Nathan Long is their current lead writer, and he's absolutely one of the best writers out there, which is why I'd be like coming up to him and going, "How much would it be to steal you for just one more novel, please? I can write all the numbers on this check." Yeah, he's their lead writer. And he didn't work on Wasteland 3 because he's working on something else that's apparently called Clockwork Revolution, but we don't know hardly anything about it, and it's been in development hell for almost 8 years.
Insert joke about it will release before Grand Theft Auto 6 meme, which I think is a
Hey,
good note to
and
be
on
on
that
that note.
and on that note, everyone, we're not going to go over the rest of the chapters here. One, because I'm sick. You probably heard me cough a couple times. You can hear the congestion in my nose. And two, this novel's thick with 3 C's, and if we were to try to go over the rest of it, we'd be here for 4 hours.
Yeah, yeah. There. I got yeah.
So at the end of the day, Ginger,
Mhm.
would you recommend someone read
Oh yeah,
this?
either read or do what I did, which was it on audiobook, which well, it was semi surreal because I was listening to it outside. So without because we'll do this, I'll go into more detail when we do a proper podcast episode. I'm not saying this one isn't proper, but I was listening because I'm on the ship right now and we were sailing between islands, so I'm listening to it at night while looking out at the ocean, and I'm like, this is definitely contradiction of images. But no, I greatly would recommend this. Like, even if you don't somehow you ended up here, I don't know how, but I think this. I am enjoying this greatly. All my critiques are mostly a very individual. Scott has a very specific sense of things he likes and doesn't like, but I still greatly enjoyed this, and in fact, I will probably listen to the rest. And would, if we get enough people to view, and do all the things with this episode, I would actually like to return to this and finish the rest of the book. And if in theory, not we wouldn't do it every single week, but it would be kind of this bonus episode. Kind of do, Fee, you would be like, all right, do this book, do this book. We are avoiding this one, and so on.
Um, if we were to return to it, I would do the same thing to you that I'm doing to Moon,
Uh,
and I would hand you book 8, Orc Slayer, and say, "This is the one you have to either read or listen to, and you have to pay really good attention. And it's not going to be hard for you to pay attention because after the third chapter, everything is going to have you hanging. Every moment is going to have you just, oh." And sometimes you're going to have to go back and go, "I need to replay that because what I just heard, I don't think I just heard that. Let me replay
mm,
that." Um,
cool.
but yeah, yeah, that one is just oof. You think what you think you're getting into is not what you got into, and by the end of it, it's the same one where at the end Gotrek goes, "And now we have sad work to do, my kin." And it just ends. And you leave the novel feeling like you won, but at what cost?
Okay.
And it's not a bad feeling necessarily. It's the type of feeling where it's like they did it. God damn, how did they do it?
Well, I'm looking forward.
And you feel exhausted for them, but
Ah,
you also feel elated at the
yeah, no,
same
I get you. I
time.
got what you mean. I get you. All right, cool.
All right. Anyway,
Well, thanks.
we'll see you all next week, hopefully,
Yep.
for a regular episode. We're gonna do 3 regular episodes, and then we're gonna do Ginger's anime episode that he suggested.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll do bonus episodes every so often. Don't try and depend on them, but it's more if we have a fun idea. But yes, so
I'm kind of targeting, ideally once a month.
yeah, and depending on my schedule,
But
hopefully my schedule's. Well, I'll go into more detail on the proper episode, but my schedule's finally settled in, and I know what days I have time carved out that I can do this. So that's one of the reasons why it took so long, is I had to get my schedule settled in.
there may also be an episode or two where I do a bonus episode without Ginger because Ginger's schedule just didn't line up. It's how it happens. I don't want to have to say that to him, but that's just something that might happen just to make sure we have content. In the meantime, like and subscribe, and remember, if we get if we get more patrons, we can make more artwork. As a matter of fact, I might just have that Gotrek piece that got made during this episode, and you stayed to the end to see it.
You too, if you subscribe, if you give enough on Patreon, you too will see Gotrek saying the word Baka.
In a schoolgirl outfit.
On that note, thank you all for listening.
Good night, everybody. Hi, I bet you all were expecting the credits, but those roll after this. Hit the like button, and in the meantime, so that cursed image we talk about, we might have made it. I'm not apologizing. And if you would like to support this endeavor, go to Patreon, who I'm about to read all the names of. But furthermore, about this cursed image shenaniganry, do you guys want it as a poster? Tell you what, if I get 5 people in the comments that say we would like this as a poster, we'll get it made up as a poster, and you can order it. It's going to be like $35 plus shipping, but that's what we'll do if you want this as a poster. Need 5 people in the comments to go, I want this as a poster. Anyway, talk to y'all later. And enjoy the Patreon, where I have to read all your names out loud now. Hello, everyone. I was asked to record this so that I could read your names out loud because I promised to do that last time. Anyway, we have first our Eternal Scouts, Commissar Von Holtz, Fraser Harris, Jesse Fishinghawk, and Short 2K. Up next, as this scroll wheel will eventually get up here and I can start rambling your names off, we have our Chief Engineers of Chaos, of which there is currently only one, Adagio Rose. Congratulations for having your name at the very top of the list. I hope you're proud of yourself. Up next, we have executives of the Slanesh Studio. Fopdoodle on Assignment Spaghetti. What is Assignment Spaghetti? Is that like a spy thing? Come on, tell me about it. Stargazer Song. So do you sing about stargazing or do you sing while you're stargazing? I'm curious. Sun Dancer. Enough said. Special Writing Cannons is our next tier, and we have Chaos Blur. Are you just a blur of chaos that just so happens to be like Slanesh Korn and Nurgle got together and things happened and now Zinch has to deal with it? Drinking Buddy. You can be my drinking buddy anytime, honey. Nozimo. Solar Aura. I'm wondering if you're a solar flare or if you put down solar flares. I'm actually curious. Thomas Curry. He's Tom. He brought me curry. That's about all I needed to know. We have the Twitty Lounge Pass from Bronze L. And Sean, a.k.a. Heart Moonstone Luntina. That is, by far, the longest and most number of nicknames out of this entire list, and I hope that you are genuinely okay with that. We have our Explosives R&D team. This is Bale Watt. He's bailing out somebody. Blackjack. I didn't realize I was sponsored by that person. We need to go talk about that. Hydra... Naros. There's no vowels there. I checked it. I lurk into corner. You can stay in the corner all you want. Just be happy. Michael Bones. Michael Breeden. The Michaels. They're boning and breeding. Pony Chick 16. She's been here forever, and I still enjoy the fact that she's still here. Ryanie Dragon Wolf. Stormy Skies. I think I misspelled your name. I'm sorry. Vivid Syntax. Zeeb 2008. Now we have our Office Raiders and Pirateers. 50 Shades of Australia. That's Nightmare Fuel I didn't need tonight. Brendan Kendall. Insane Scorpio the sus one. Yes, you're always sus. Justin Ray. There's no vowels there. Where are the vowels? Carl Bragginson. Legate Lori. Are you with the Roman Empire? Loon. That's his entire name. Shadowman 1725. The Phoenix Lord, aka Captain. Aye, Captain of my privateers. Testing audience, we have Benjamin Kleiner, David Fenwick, Paulus the Mad. That guy's been there since like year 1 and he's still here. Thomas Hugan. He's Tom. He's about to Hugh Gins. Maybe give the Hawk Tua lady a run for her money. Producer credits. We have Craig Held, DeBirch, Final Sight, Meh, Scott Vogel, Sleeping Soul, and Thermesto 97. They just wanted a producer credit. You technically helped produce this. Congratulations. I would also like to offer special thanks to Caffey Cup, my wife, for tolerating my insanity and my ramblings. Mary the Tank Mom and Winston the Tank Dad for helping me get my start in life to begin with. Reggie, my wife's cat. May he rest in peace. Goodbye, Reggie. And Scott Vogel, my co-host and editor. Yes, his name got said twice. Deal with it. In the meantime, please do show up next week where we're going to talk about Gotrek and Felix. I am correcting it now because we've already done the Bretonia episode. We'll be talking about Gotrek and Felix. Hit the like button, and if you want your name up here, it's $1, and I will have to change this and re-record this and read it again. Good night, everybody.